This film tells the story of the Synergy programme, in which we work together as 3 creative organisations based in the South West to identify new sources of funding for our work. The Synergy programme was supported by the Arts Council Catalyst Fund.
I'm Diana Cole and I'm one of the directors of CEDA. CEDA stands for Community Equality Disability Action, and we are a charity that works with disabled people.
I'm Deb Richardson and I'm a producer at Somerset Film, which is an organisation dedicated to empowering people through film and digital media.
My name is Mark Cotton and I'm Development Director at SuperAct. Essentially, SuperAct is a not-for-profit organisation. It's a community interest company that uses participatory arts and music to make people's lives better. The Arts Council created the Catalyst Fund to help organisations like SuperAct to move away from an over-reliance and a dependency purely on grant funding.
We're very good at doing things for free and wanting to help people all of the time for nothing, but it's kind of challenging that status and to ask the question, you know, can people help? Can people pay for some activities?
So it's helping us to look at things differently, looking at different sources of funding, different ways to approach, rather than trusts, foundations and public funding. We're starting to look at philanthropy, crowdfunding, corporate sponsorship, working with businesses and working with the community.
So we're going to play 5 beats and then strike a pose. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pose. So we'll try that. Everyone ready? So, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pose.
I guess you have to start somewhere, don't you?
Yeah.
So you start with the information on who has the capacity to give, and it's a long haul, isn't it? We know this. It's because you don't go in and ask them for money straight away. You've got to build that relationship, and who knows? It could be the little old lady who pops in once a week to use your internet. Don't know. You just don't know.
In the first instance, the partners undertook research and we shared that, the findings amongst one another. So there's a lot of learning from each other. But we also employed 2 consultants, Gillian Taylor and Isabel Knight. And each of them worked with the partners, with the different organisations to go right back to the basics, really.
We're having lots of debates about whether or not we need to become a charity rather than a CIC, or have a charity as well as a CIC.
Yeah.
Because I think we'd get a lot more in donations if we were a
Yes.
charity. And so there's a big debate about that at the moment.
Everything from looking at your business plan and your objectives for the next 3 years, and to help us communicate it more clearly. I think it was also really invaluable for our board to go and meet the board of CEDA, for example.
We wanted to be able to explore how other organisations would approach the Catalyst Fund. But not only that, how other organisations are currently looking at other sources of income.
It just helped with with embedding the cultural shift that needed to happen in the organisation, to actually see that we weren't alone, that others were having to do it too. We used a research company, Milestone Research, to explore and investigate local companies in Somerset. So we gave them a very specific geographic area to look at. Companies that could donate, had donated in the past, or perhaps had directors with interests in film, the arts and digital media.
Working with businesses, we've made some good approaches with Sainsbury's, and we're also making some nice links with the Met Office in Exeter. Sainsbury's invited us to pitch because we had been nominated by their customers and staff as one of the charities they'd like to support. The work that we'd done with Gillian and Isabel through the Catalyst Fund got us ready and prepared to be able to go in and make the pitch, and out of the 3 we were the ones that were successful.
Would you like to buy a draw ticket?
I would.
Oh, would you? Oh, wonderful, thank you.
What we look to do is each store will choose what it's called a local charity. Our aim is to get involved with the communities in which we sort of operate within. And what we look for is we look for small independent charities who need a little bit of help. They come into the store, we're able to sort of give them exposure and had just helped raise their profile with the sort of general public or the communities that we sort of serve.
Fantastic prizes, and we have raised over £1,000 selling the tickets this year. So that's a fantastic achievement for the very first time we have done it.
What would you say you've learned from this experience?
One element of the feedback, I think, from Sainsbury's was that one of the other charities had just gone on this. Well, this is how I'm going to spend the 25,000 that you're going to raise for me. We'd gone more on the tact of, we're going to work with you, we're going to put these events, we've got these ideas. You came up with a bag idea, didn't you? Because the fact they've got to change the way they do bags in October. So one of our suggestions was working together with them to redesign a bag using our artists and doing something like that. Because Sainsbury's were a sponsor of the Paralympics, that we could take our sports activities to them, to the store, and kind of have a go session, so it raises awareness of disability, raises awareness of CEDA. So table cricket's already gone down. I think we raised £200. They have different groups down there as well, different forums. They seem to have like a young employees forum, and they asked, I think Sarah went that time to go and talk to them about what we do. Sainsbury's are very proactive in putting lots of events on throughout the year for which we will benefit, but we also need to provide some of our time to those events, which can be a challenge when everybody's working full time. So sometimes it's just about finding the right project that works for both us and the business, and then finding all of that time to put to it has been our biggest challenge.
That's good. One of the things I was just writing down here, which was really evident in the Sainsbury's pitch, is case studies.
Yeah.
Go and find a case study.
Yeah. Case studies are a really effective way of getting a message across, particularly the case studies that have a human interest angle to them. A case study that talks to an organisation or talks to an individual is crucial in the work that we do. At Supract, we've been working with a group of young mothers in Devon. One of the biggest challenges for young mothers is that they feel stigmatised by the situation they find themselves in. At Supract, we've been working with them to help improve their self-confidence and using creativity as a tool for helping them to kind of find their feet, if you like, and to kind of take their rightful place in society.
There's this group where we can learn and have our babies with us. So I said I'd come along, and here I am, 8 weeks later.
It's the difference that you make. So case studies can provide very clear examples. There are lots of case studies that come through our weekly drop-ins, open access sessions where members of the public can use our equipment and get advice and support on projects free of charge. For example, one lady, Helmy Wolf, came in initially just to record a story.
I have written a book, and it's due to the engine room that I've been able to type it all up and get it into CD, get it to publishers, being accepted, coming out this summer.
They help people to understand the difference you make, see it in real terms. Greg has cerebral palsy and complex communication. He uses an eye-pointing board, so people need to be familiar and be able to watch where he's going with his head as he points to the letters and spells out what he wants to say. And he comes to us all the way from Brixham and travels for at least an hour each way because he feels that we give him the support that he needs, we listen, and we help him to achieve what he wants to achieve.
At Supract, we've set about building relationships with business, specifically with one of our bigger programs. Our Big Gig is a nationwide annual event, a celebration of community music, where we support local organisations, local individuals to fundraise for their own events. We've been in a position over recent years to support them in that through small grants which came to us from a public source. In order to make our Big Gig more sustainable, we've had to look at how we diversify that income stream, not only for Supract, but also for the individual communities that want to put on an event. And we've looked at crowdfunding to help us with that.
Supract approached us, and I think the reason why Space Hive did appeal to them, when we met and discussed this initially last year, was partly because Supract can get exposure as an entity through Space Hive because we have this Hive model, and all the Hive is just a branded hub on our site. So it's almost like a software license that they've got for an area on Space Hive that belongs to SuperAct, that hosts all the individual projects, the individual Our Big Gigs.
Crowdfunding's essential for independent filmmakers, so it was quite natural that it would be one of the fundraising activities that we would explore. So we undertook a fundraising campaign for our BFI Film Academy students, which is a group of young people aged 16 to 19 who are interested in becoming filmmakers. We began on Kickstarter, which is quite a well-known platform, but requires that you reach your fundraising target. And that initial approach wasn't successful. So we then used another platform where you could just take whatever money was donated, and that was much more successful.
I do think this model of funding has shaken things up a bit, the crowdfunding model in particular. It's quite disruptive. It's bringing people to a project rather than the project running around trying to chase different pots of money. I think a lot of grant makers, for small amounts of money, do not make it easy for applicants. They really don't.
In all the work I've done with all of you, what's very evident is it's grassroots, upwards. It's getting people to know your organisation and then going to their company saying, oh, actually, yeah, you're looking for a company to support. I do some volunteering, or I know this great company over here. Again, it might be to think about, well, actually, is it something that one of the board members in your organisation could, in the short term, be, actually, I could coordinate the volunteers. It's only a few hours a week.
One of our trustees did a fundraising event. He held a screening of a friend's film in the village where he lives, invited all his friends to it, and they did a curry night. So it was film and a curry, and people donated at the ticket price. But as a result of that, then it opened up a conversation with a local business. They are interested in supporting work with ex-offenders.
Earlier in the summer, we had a phone call from Michael Evis out of the blue, which was very nice. But yeah, interestingly, he'd heard about us, and he's really interested in the justice work that we do in prisons and wants to meet.
There's a lot of CSR investment into training in young people and ex-offenders and sort of this excluded part of the population, and you have a great programme.
The main purpose really is to look at skills that young people need for employment, and it's to present that in a different, more hands-on way. Different people have had strengths about whether they can write well or whether they can organise. So they didn't necessarily have to be a good musician to go on the course. They could just be really good at planning, or really good at getting people to do things at the right time, or just being a really good team player. I think in both the projects that I've run, the confidence of the participants from the beginning to the end has just been absolutely massive, and actually being able to stand up in front of people and speak, and just kind of not worrying about perhaps being a bit outside their comfort zone, or worrying about having a go of it, or even worrying what other people might think of them. They've learnt to just know that having a go and giving it their best shot is is really good.
I've just read the 2015 report by the Warwick Commission, for example, on cultural value, and they state very clearly that they are concerned about the impact of austerity measures on the local and regional cultural activity in which we sit here.
I think if you're looking at a reduction in public subsidy, you're looking to retract that and replace with business, it's a whole different concept, and it wouldn't be easy.
Coming here today, I've talked to a number of businesses, and there's a it just seems to be a black hole where money goes into, and where's the benefit coming out, and I'm just not sure that the arts and the businesses are talking the same language.
You've got to have some sort of budget if you're going to have spare money for the arts. Having said that, if one's approached, and it could just be a letter.
I might get a letter, and because I've got an interest in that particular thing, that I might be more prone to do it.
There's lots of opportunities for sponsors to get involved with CEDA. We do a lot of project-specific work. If you take Impezi, for example, the funding largely came through from the Arts Council for that, but had we had a sponsor for that project, the programme would have been able to be produced professionally, and they obviously would have been credited for that within there as well. As it happens, we did that sort of thing in-house because we didn't have the budget for it. But there's lots of projects like Impezi that we'll be doing in the future that offers a lot more opportunity for sponsors.
Who wrote this down? Fantastic cut. That's really good, Stu.
Well done, Stuart.
Your first question, unfortunately, is going to be how much. Whatever happens, it's, you know, you're going to have to get the story over to me quite quickly, getting it across succinctly, and also understanding that I don't understand the language in the arts. So don't bombard me with social value, all of those sorts of things that are going to take me time to interpret. It's going to be, this is valuable to this stakeholder group, this stakeholder group, and this stakeholder group, and this is how much it's going to cost. Most businesses would be able to probably sign off between £500 and £1,000 without having to go to a board meeting. If you're going to get over a certain limit, I'm going to have to go somewhere else to get that signed off. So corporate social responsibility for smaller companies is going to be based on the amount.
You're comfortable with the concept of giving to the arts?
Yeah, as long as I can totally understand what it is I'm giving, and then, if you know what I mean, I use it in business terms a lot, to create the conversation from when I've left the room. So if you can leave it so that the businesses can talk eloquently and knowledgeably about why they've contributed to the art, you'll be fine, you'll get money.
So what do you use arts sponsorship for? Normally it's branding awareness, it's maybe events that you can invite people to, because I think post 2008 we are in a very different world, and I do think that the arts sector has probably taken a long time to recognise that businesses aren't constantly handing out cash for good causes.
SuperAct, our other partner, they put together a project called The Last Post to commemorate the First World War. And they had a diverse group of people, groups of people or individuals, playing The Last Post on different instruments, for instance. And in this case, they got Mark Knopfler aboard.
The difficulty, if you do have a star or you do have somebody associated with it, do they fit your brand, and what is that association worth? So I think one has to be careful, but in the end it's still very much, does this fit with what we're trying to do? Arts organisations need to think like businesses and think about what can we cross-sell, what else can we do, what alternative services can we offer that are aligned, that may be there to provide supplementary income to be able to support what else we do, rather than just think, this is what I want to do, let's get somebody else to fund it.
I've learnt that it takes time to build relationships, and that it might be a chance conversation, but you've also got to put yourself in the right place to have a chance conversation. It's really interesting because some of the most valuable help you can get from companies is not even about pounds being handed over. It's about advice, it's about the skills that those staff can bring to you that you might not otherwise have a budget to access. For example, Kia Industries gave us access to one of their advisors, and he came down and advised us on the expansion of our building that we are about to undertake. And it was a real insight, you know, it was information that we wouldn't otherwise know about. And was invaluable, really.
Certainly for larger businesses, 100 people or whatever, I think actively encouraging people to get involved in some pro bono activity, whatever it may be, whether it's school governors or whatever, as I appreciate obviously the arts is we're talking about now, is a positive thing, because I think it's also a leadership development, and I would look at that as part of somebody's training development programme. That is a way that companies are much more happy to give people's time, as long as it's boxed and limited.
You're still talking about the larger organisation, aren't you? I mean, as a representative of the FSB, a lot of your businesses are very small, aren't they? I'd say under 10 people. They're not going to be able to spare a tenth of their workforce on any great deal of time.
But they would much prefer to give time than money.
You might give time, which takes, of course, time with the arts organisation. No doubt very grateful to have it. But I know that in some funding models, they've almost been, particularly in the larger corporate, where they have received substantive sums. It's just that then they almost practically have to give one whole employee's time to manage that relationship, that partnership with the
But that's
with the
what the
sponsor.
argument businesses would give. We do that all the time. And that's how we earn our money, is by building relationships. And I think that would be my thing about arts projects, is that's not always done. I mean, you've got to look at how we as a nation view our art.
Well,
and that's
how we as a nation view innovation in art.
innovation in art and all that sort of thing.
I think the future of funding is going to be one of balance. There will always be those communities who don't have equity of access, and there will always be that cutting edge work that's not supported because it's viewed as being risky, because it actually asks too many questions.
There really does need to be some sort of fund that can be bid for by organisations so that they can produce new creative works.
So you say we can't really rely on business ever to fund that innovative, relatively expensive per output, high quality
Well,
product.
why would they?
I'm somewhat agree. I mean, I'm very sad myself at the demise of public funding of the arts, but we are where we are.
Why wouldn't you, as part of business corporation tax or whatever else it is, have an extra 0.5% or whatever, it's a levy?
What as an optional opt-in?
It could be.
You could say, right, we're going to, do a levy on businesses of, say, 0.5%. So that money goes into a pot. But what you've got to do is, first of all, get the businesses on side to find out what it's about.
Well, I quite like the idea of a levy. If you think all the argument over the BBC licence fee, well, surely a fraction of that could be allocated to local performance arts.
I think a business levy for the arts is actually a fantastic idea. With all of the public funding cuts that have happened over recent years, the arts has taken a bit of a battering.
I don't think businesses will go for it. But the thing that Catalyst has done is it's started that conversation and it's started us on that journey.
I view the future funding-wise positively. Catalyst has allowed us to look at a whole different way of funding. So now we're diversifying that and have lots of different streams to make us more sustainable.
We are currently going through a process of investment readiness, because not only are we looking for sponsorship, grant funding, donations, but we're also looking for people who want to invest in us in the future as well. But we're looking for social investors, so we want to make sure that our impact is fully understood and is attractive to a social investor, to ensure that not only are they getting their investment back in monetary terms, but they're also achieving a social impact as well.
And that's where arts organisations have really got to understand, is that it's not all about them. And I think it is trying to move away from, so okay, how can we work together so that you can bet? We live in a win-win world, and I've got to win, you've got to win. And how do we find a way of achieving that?
We are optimistic about continuing to build successful relationships with businesses and donors. But we do recognise that there are significant areas which we cannot realistically expect to see funded from these new sources. These include equality of access and support for cutting-edge work. This is especially true in rural areas such as the South West.